Chapter 1. The Phone Call. The city was still waking up when the rain began. It came down in thin silver sheets, tapping against the wide windows of McMahon Associates, a boutique architectural firm perched on the 12th floor of a steel and glass tower in downtown Seattle. Inside, the hum of conversation mixed with the rhythmic click of pens and keyboards. At the center of the conference room table sat Clint McMahon, 42 years old, sharp in both mind and dress. His tie was perfectly straight, his cufflinks polished, his sketchpad open to a half-finished model of a waterfront residential complex. He was explaining structural lines to a junior architect when his office phone, sitting near the coffee pot, began to ring. His assistant, Lori, poked her head through the glass door. "Clint, there's a call for you. They say it's urgent. From Lakewood Academy." Clint frowned. "Never heard of it. Take a message, would you?" "I'm in the middle of—" "She says it's about your daughter," Lori interrupted, her brow creasing. The pen slipped from Clint's hand. A faint metallic clatter echoed on the glass table. "My what?" he said. Lori looked uncertain. "Your daughter." That's what she said. For a moment, Clint just stared at her. The room had gone oddly quiet. Even the junior architect glanced up from his laptop, sensing something shift in the air. Clint gave a forced chuckle, shaking his head. "Wrong number," he muttered. "Patch it through anyway." He stepped into his private office, closing the door behind him. The rain drummed harder on the window as he picked up the receiver. "This is Clint McMahon." A composed woman's voice came through, professional yet urgent. "Mr. McMahon, this is Principal Diane Langford from Lakewood Academy. I'm calling regarding your daughter, Carrie. I'm afraid there's been an incident at school today. She's been expelled. We need to come pick her up immediately." Clint blinked. He wasn't sure he'd heard her correctly. "I'm sorry, what did you just say?" "Your daughter, Carrie McMahon," the principal repeated calmly. "She's in my office right now." A chill crept up his spine. I think there's been a mistake. I don't have a daughter." There was a brief pause on the line, filled only by the faint background noise of a ticking clock. Then, in a careful tone, the principal said, "Mr. McMahon, the student has her last name, your contact information, and your wife's name listed as her mother. All records indicate she's your child." Clint's mouth went dry. "My wife's name?" "Yes, Kathleen McMahon." He pressed his hand to his forehead, pacing behind his desk. "Listen, I don't know who's playing some kind of sick joke, but I have no daughter. My wife and we don't have children. I understand this is confusing," the principal said gently, "but we do need you to come in. This is not something we can handle over the phone." "Come in for what?" His voice was sharper now, bordering on disbelief. "To collect your daughter," she said softly. "Please, Mr. McMahon. She's very upset." Then the line went dead. For a long moment, Clint stood still, staring at the receiver. The office around him felt suddenly foreign. The neat models, the architectural drawings pinned to the walls, the framed degrees that once made him proud. He could hear the faint chatter from the other room, muffled by glass. His pulse thudded in his ears. Kathleen? His wife had been at charity brunch that morning, he thought. She hadn't mentioned anything unusual. She couldn't have done something this bizarre. Lori peeked in again. "Everything okay, Mr. McMahon?" He nodded automatically, though his mind was spinning. "Cancel the afternoon meeting. Tell Mark to handle the clients from Bellevue. I've got a personal matter to deal with." She hesitated. "Do you want me to just handle it, Lori?" His voice came out sharper than intended. He softened it with a tight smile. "Please." Within minutes, Clint was in the elevator, trench coat over his arm, mind running circles. The rain outside had turned heavier, pooling in the streets, washing the gray world into streaks of silver and asphalt. He unlocked his car, slid inside, and sat for a few seconds before starting the engine. "Your daughter," the principal had said. The words replayed in his head like a broken record. Kathleen's name. A 15-year-old girl. Lakewood Academy. He typed the school's name into his phone GPS and followed the robotic voice that guided him north through traffic. As the cityscape blurred by, he tried calling Kathleen. Straight to voicemail. He called again. Same thing. He gripped the steering wheel tighter, frustration bleeding into unease. Kathleen wasn't the kind to ignore calls, not from him. Halfway across the bridge toward the Lakewood district, Clint caught his reflection in the rearview mirror. The dark eyes, the tired creases at the corners, the salt in his hair. He looked older suddenly, uncertain. The man who had built skyscrapers and designed homes for hundreds of people couldn't make sense of a single phone call. Maybe it's a scam, he muttered aloud. Identity theft or something. But the voice on the phone hadn't sounded like a scammer. Too calm, too real. The rain thickened as he pulled into the school's parking lot 20 minutes later. The brick facade of Lakewood Academy loomed before him, stately, with polished windows and banners fluttering in the stormy wind. The kind of school parents dream of sending their kids to. He parked, stepped out into the rain, and hurried up the steps. A receptionist behind the counter looked up the moment he entered, her expression tightening with recognition. "Mr. McMahon?" she asked. "Yes," Clint said warily. "I'm here because, yes, Principal Langford is expecting you." She pressed a button on the intercom. "He's here." A door opened at the far end of the hall, and a woman in her 50s appeared, the principal, no doubt. Neatly dressed, calm-faced, holding a clipboard. "Mr. McMahon," she said, "thank you for coming so quickly." "Where is she?" "In my office." As they walked down the corridor, Clint's shoes squeaked on the polished floor. Students' eyes followed him curiously from classroom windows. Every step felt heavier. "I'm sorry to call you under these circumstances," Principal Langford said. "Your daughter was involved in a physical altercation during lunch. We've tried to reach your wife as well, but..." He cut her off. "I don't have a daughter." She stopped mid-step, turning to him. "Mr. McMahon, please. I understand you're upset, but this isn't the time for denial. The paperwork..." "I'm telling you," he snapped, "there's been some mistake. I don't know who this girl is." The principal studied him for a long moment, perhaps deciding whether he was lying or losing his mind, then sighed. "Come see for yourself." They reached the office. Through the frosted glass panel, Clint could make out a small figure sitting on a chair, shoulders hunched. Principal Langford opened the door. Inside, the air was thick with quiet. A teenage girl sat clutching her backpack, tears streaking her pale cheeks. Her uniform was slightly torn, a bruise on her arm. She looked up as the door opened, and Clint froze, because the eyes that met his, wide, frightened, and shimmering with confusion, were his own. The shape of the nose, the line of the jaw, the faint dimple on the left cheek that only appeared when he was upset. He couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The principal's voice faded somewhere behind him, saying something about expulsion and responsibility. But Clint didn't hear it. All he could do was stare at the girl crying in front of him, a girl who looked exactly like him. Chapter 2, The Girl Who Looks Like Me. For a long moment, Clint couldn't find his voice. The girl sitting before him seemed carved out of his own reflection. The same dark hair, the same high cheekbones, the same searching eyes that looked both cautious and curious. The principal, Diane Langford, broke the silence. "Mr. McMahon, this is Carrie. Carrie McMahon." The girl sniffled, her gaze darting between Clint and the floor. "Hi," she murmured, almost too softly to hear. Clint swallowed hard. "McMahon," he repeated. "Did you say McMahon?" "Yes." The principal nodded. "She's been enrolled under that name for the past 4 months. According to our records, you and your wife, Kathleen McMahon, are her parents." "That's impossible," Clint said sharply. "My wife and I don't have children." Principal Langford set down her clipboard and gestured toward the chair opposite Carrie. "Mr. McMahon, please. Sit down. I know this must be confusing, but perhaps if we talk through the situation calmly, we can clarify whatever misunderstanding this is." Clint sat slowly, the leather chair creaking beneath him. The room smelled faintly of coffee and wet coats. Outside the window, the rain kept coming down in diagonal sheets, muting the city's noise. Carrie's fingers twisted the hem of her school blazer. Her eyes were red-rimmed, but when she risked a glance at him, there was something like recognition there, as though she'd been told to expect him. "Carrie," the principal said gently, "this is Mr. McMahon. He's here because there seems to be some confusion about your enrollment." Carrie's brow furrowed. "Confusion?" "Yes," Clint said, leaning forward, voice firm but careful. "Because I don't know you. I've never met you. And I don't have a daughter." The words hung in the air, heavy and final. The girl blinked rapidly, as if she'd been slapped. Her lips parted, then closed again. But my mom said she stopped herself, hugging her backpack closer. Principal Langford shot Clint a warning look, softer now, almost maternal. Mr. McMahon, maybe it would help if we start from the beginning. She pulled out a folder from her desk drawer and opened it. Inside was a neat stack of enrollment documents, medical forms, and tuition receipts. Clint's eyes caught his own signature at the bottom of several pages. His heart stuttered. The slant, the pressure of the pen, it was perfect. His signature, his name, his handwriting. Only it wasn't. He'd never signed these. Langford slid one of the pages toward him. According to this, Carrie was enrolled last June by your wife, Kathleen McMahon. Full tuition paid up front, $40,000 by cashier's check. Clint stared at the papers. Cashier's check? We never. He stopped himself, shaking his head. This doesn't make any sense. She's been an exemplary student until this incident. The principal went on, her tone measured. Straight A's. Quiet. Respectful. Today was uncharacteristic. A fight in the cafeteria. But that's secondary right now. What matters is resolving this identity matter. He glanced at Carrie again. You're saying my wife enrolled you? Carrie nodded uncertainly. Yes. She said she was my mom. Clint frowned. What did she look like? The girl hesitated. She had brown hair, a little past her shoulders. Wore glasses sometimes. She was really nice. He pulled his phone from his pocket, scrolled quickly, and held up a picture of Kathleen from their anniversary trip, blonde, elegant, smiling beside a vineyard. Is this her? Carrie studied the screen for a moment, her eyes narrowing. Then she shook her head slowly. No, I don't think so. Clint's stomach sank. Langford folded her hands. You can see why I thought this situation was unusual, Mr. McMahon. But all the documentation checks out. Social security number, home address, emergency contacts, even your business card was attached. He stared at her, incredulous. That's impossible. Someone forged everything. It's all under your name and your wife's, she said quietly. Clint pushed the folder back, trying to steady his breathing. Can I get copies of these forms? I'll need to verify them with law enforcement. Of course, the principal said. We'll cooperate in any way necessary. She stood, crossing to the printer. Would you like some water, Mr. McMahon? He barely heard her. His eyes were locked on the girl in front of him. She was still hugging her bag, still trembling faintly. Every few seconds, she peeked at him, as though memorizing his face. Finally, he spoke again, softer this time. Carrie, can I ask you something? She looked up. Who told you I was your father? She swallowed hard. My mom. And what's your mom's name? Frances, she said automatically. Frances Carlson. Clint blinked. The name struck something deep in his memory, though it felt like it belonged to another life, a faint echo of a night long gone. He cleared his throat. Frances Carlson? Are you sure? Carrie nodded. Yes, sir. Langford returned, placing the copies in a neat pile before him, but Clint barely noticed. His mind was tumbling through fragments of memory. A hotel bar in Portland, laughter, rain on a window pane, a woman with auburn hair and tired eyes. No, that was 15 years ago. A mistake. One he buried. But as he looked at the girl again, her eyes, her cheekbones, the unmistakable curve of her smile, the pieces began to slide together, horrifyingly so. He stood abruptly. I need to speak with my wife, he said. And I'll need to contact this girl's mother. I'm sure there's a reasonable explanation. Principal Langford raised an eyebrow. You don't seem sure at all. He forced a hollow smile. Would you be? The principal hesitated, then turned to Carrie. Carrie, why don't you wait outside for a moment while I speak privately with Mr. McMahon? Carrie hesitated, glancing at Clint, then at the door. Am I in trouble? No, Langford said gently. Not at all. We just need to clear something up. The girl nodded and slipped out, closing the door softly behind her. For a few seconds, silence filled the office. Clint ran a hand through his hair, exhaling sharply. Principal Langford, I swear to you, I have no idea how this happened. My wife would never. She couldn't possibly. I don't doubt your sincerity, Langford interrupted. But facts are facts. The girl was enrolled here under your name and your wife's. Tuition was paid. Everything matches your records. Clint paced near the window. Outside, the rain had slowed to a drizzle, sunlight struggling through gray clouds. He felt like the world itself was trying to make sense of the absurdity unfolding inside this small room. When the door creaked open again, Carrie was standing there, her face pale but determined. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't mean to cause trouble." Clint turned toward her, stunned by how small her voice sounded. "You didn't do anything wrong." She hesitated, then stepped closer, eyes glistening. "My mom said, my dad finally wanted to meet me." The words hit him like a blow. His breath caught. The principal's pen stilled mid-note. And for the first time in years, Clint McMahon, the man who prided himself on logic, structure, and control, felt the solid ground of his world shift beneath his feet. Chapter 3: The Forgotten Past. The wipers beat in a slow, hypnotic rhythm as Clint drove through the rain, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. The world outside blurred into smudges of gray. Buildings, trees, headlights, everything dissolving into a watercolor of disbelief. 15 minutes had passed since he'd left Lakewood Academy, but his mind hadn't caught up. Every time he blinked, he saw the same image, the girl's face, tearful and trembling, those unmistakable eyes staring up at him as she said, "My mom said my dad finally wanted to meet me." The words repeated like a curse. He couldn't explain it. He didn't want to. But deep inside, beneath layers of logic and denial, something recognized her. Something ancient and buried. He turned off the main highway, pulling into the underground parking beneath his apartment tower. The elevator ride to the penthouse felt endless. The mirrored walls reflected a man who suddenly looked 10 years older. Soaked coat, tired eyes, haunted expression. Inside the apartment, the faint scent of lavender candles lingered. The home was spotless, minimalist, expensive, just like Kathleen liked it. Her shoes sat by the door. A wine glass half full rested on the counter beside a magazine. "Kat?" he called, his voice echoing through the silence. No answer. He checked the bedroom, the study. Nothing. Her phone charger was plugged in, but her phone wasn't there. He let out a shaky sigh and sank onto the couch. The sound of the rain against the windows was louder here, filling the silence with static. He rubbed his temples, trying to make sense of everything. But his thoughts refused to line up neatly. They twisted and tangled, dragging him back to a place he'd locked away for years. 15 years ago. Portland. He'd been 30 then, young, ambitious, but already married. He and Kathleen had been struggling. His career consumed him, and she felt invisible. They fought often, bitterly, sometimes for hours, until silence became their only truce. That spring, he'd attended an architecture conference in Portland. 3 days of presentations, networking dinners, and sleepless nights in a hotel suite that felt too big. On the last night, he'd met her, Frances Carlson, a marketing rep for a construction firm. He remembered her auburn hair, her quiet laugh, her honesty. She wasn't glamorous like Kathleen. She was warm, real, unguarded. They'd shared dinner, drinks, too many stories about dreams and failures. He remembered her saying, "I used to want to be an artist, but art doesn't pay rent." He'd laughed. Then she'd looked at him, really looked at him, and asked softly, "When's the last time someone really saw you?" He couldn't answer. It happened fast, a mistake wrapped in comfort, a moment that felt like understanding and ended in guilt. He left before sunrise. No phone numbers, no promises, no goodbye. He'd spent months hating himself afterward, telling no one, swearing it would never happen again. And it hadn't, until now, when the past had come back wearing the face of a 15-year-old girl. Clint snapped back to the present, heart pounding. Could it really be her child? Could Carrie really be his? He opened his laptop, searching for Frances Carlson, Portland. The name felt foreign and familiar at once. A few results popped up, social media profiles, outdated listings, a community fundraiser article with a small picture. There she was. Older now, hair shorter, face softer. But it was her. He hesitated for a long moment, then clicked message. His hands hovered over the keyboard. How did one even begin such a conversation? Francis, it's Clint McMahon. I know this must be unexpected. I need to talk to you. It's important about your daughter. He hit send before he could overthink it. An hour later, a reply arrived. Clint, my God, I wondered if this day would ever come. Call me. She included a number. His heart hammered as he dialed. The line clicked, and her voice came through, warm but wary, a voice he remembered too well. Francis. Clint, she said quietly. It's been a long time. He exhaled shakily. 15 years. Yes, she said. There was a pause. I take it you met her. Carrie. His throat tightened. She was at a school today. They called me, said she'd been expelled. I didn't even know she existed. Francis. I swear to God, I didn't. Francis sighed on the other end. I believe you. He leaned forward on the couch. Then explain it to me. Why does she have my name? Why do they think my wife enrolled her? Another pause. Then, softly, because Kathleen came to see me, he froze. What? About 6 months ago, Francis said. She showed up at my house. Said she was your wife, which I didn't doubt, and told me you'd recently found out about Carrie. She said you were ashamed, but you wanted to help. She brought paperwork, tuition forms, even offered to pay for her to attend a private school. I thought it was strange, but she knew details only your wife would know. Your birthday, your firm's name, your parents' hometown. Clint's pulse quickened. She said I wanted to pay for her education. Yes. He rose from the couch, pacing. Francis, I didn't even know about her. Why would Kathleen? He stopped himself, unable to finish. I asked her why you didn't reach out personally, Francis continued. She said you were too guilty, that this was your way of making things right quietly. She seemed kind, Clint. Gentle. I didn't question it. Clint felt the world tilt. Do you still have any of that paperwork? Yes. I saved everything. Emails, receipts, even a letter she wrote. I can show you. I'm coming there, he said immediately. Tonight. It's late, Francis said softly. You'll drive through the night? I don't care. Clint, I have to see for myself. A long silence followed. Then she whispered, she looks just like you. He closed his eyes. Yeah, he murmured. I know. By dawn, Clint's car was on I-5 South, heading toward Portland. The sky was bruised blue, the horizon just beginning to lighten. Francis lived on the outskirts of town, in a modest 2-story house with peeling paint and a small garden out front. She opened the door before he could knock. She looked older, yes, but her eyes were still the same, kind, a little sad, the eyes of someone who'd carried too much alone. Clint, she said softly. He nodded, stepping inside. Francis. The living room was simple, mismatched furniture, old photos on the wall, the faint smell of coffee and lavender soap. On the mantel sat a framed picture of Carrie at age 10, smiling with missing teeth. She's beautiful, Clint said quietly. Francis smiled faintly. She's a good kid. Smart, stubborn, just like you. He exhaled, still scanning the photo. Show me what Kathleen gave you. Francis walked to a desk and pulled out a manila folder. Inside were printed emails, stamped receipts, and a formal letter on McMahon Associates letterhead. Clint lifted one page. The signature at the bottom was his. Or, at least, a perfect imitation of it. This is forged, he said, his voice trembling. Francis's brows knit together. I'm sorry, Clint. I truly believed it was real. He sank into a chair, the papers trembling in his hand. She knew, he whispered. Kathleen knew about Carrie this whole time. Francis sat opposite him, her face filled with quiet pity. Then she's been keeping secrets from both of us. Clint stared down at the forged signature, his name written in someone else's hand, and for the first time, the disbelief began to burn into something darker. It wasn't just shock anymore. It was betrayal. Chapter 4, The Web of Lies. The Seattle skyline shimmered under a cold drizzle when Clint pulled into the underground garage of their condominium. His mind was a storm, faces, lies, and 15 years of false peace colliding in a blur of disbelief. He'd spent all night driving back from Portland, his thoughts gnawing at every word Francis had said. Kathleen had known. She'd known about Carrie, and she had forged his name, stolen his identity, and built a web of deceit so calculated that even Francis believed her. When Clint stepped inside the apartment, the smell of vanilla candles and perfume hit him like a wave of artificial calm. The house looked too perfect, pillows fluffed, lights dimmed, jazz playing softly from the speakers. It was her routine, her way of pretending everything was fine. Kathleen emerged from the hallway in a silk robe, her hair tied loosely. "You're home early," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Early," he said flatly. "It's nearly noon." She glanced at the clock, pretending surprise. "Oh, I didn't even realize. You didn't answer my text last night. I was in Portland." That caught her. For half a second, her smile faltered. "Portland? For what?" He studied her face, how her lashes fluttered, how her tone softened like she was talking to a client. "You tell me," he said. "I what?" She laughed nervously. "Clint, you're scaring me. What's this about?" He took a slow step toward her. "I met her. Carrie." The color drained from Kathleen's face. Her lips parted, but no words came out. She looked like a statue, cracking from the inside. "I don't know what you're talking about," she finally said, voice trembling just slightly. "Yes, you do." His tone sharpened. "You went to see Frances Carlson. You told her I wanted to pay for Carrie's tuition. You forged my name on the school's forms. You've been pretending to help her while lying to me." Her composure snapped back like a mask being fitted. "That's insane," she said firmly, shaking her head. "I don't even know a Frances Carlson." "Clint, where is this coming from?" He slammed a folder onto the kitchen counter, the one Frances had given him. Inside, the forged documents spilled out. Receipts, emails, his fake signature printed neatly across them all. "It's coming from this," he shouted. "You've been lying to me, Kathleen." She took a step back, clutching her robe. "You're overreacting. These could be fakes. Someone's trying to mess with you." "Someone," he hissed. "Who would do that?" She hesitated. "I don't know. Maybe that woman, Frances, whatever her name is, maybe she wants money. Maybe she's setting us up." Clint's laugh was hollow. "You expect me to believe that?" Her eyes glistened. "Clint, listen to yourself. You sound paranoid. You've been under so much stress lately. Those late nights at the firm, the sleeplessness. Maybe this whole thing is clouding your judgment." He stared at her, the words "clouding your judgment" echoing in his mind. He knew that tone, soft, patronizing, deliberate. She was gaslighting him. He clenched his fists. "Don't do that, Kathleen. Don't make me question my sanity because you got caught." "I'm not doing anything," she snapped suddenly, her voice rising. "I'm trying to talk to you, but you're accusing me of crimes I didn't commit." Then explain the forged signature. "I can't." The silence that followed was suffocating. The rain outside battered against the windows like fists on glass. Finally, she turned away, her shoulders trembling. "I can't believe you'd think I'd do something like this after everything we've been through." Her voice broke just enough to sound convincing. "Maybe you don't trust me anymore. Maybe that's the real problem." He wanted to shout, to demand truth, but something in her tone stopped him. It was too controlled, too rehearsed. Instead, he looked around the apartment and noticed details he hadn't before. A new diamond bracelet glittered on her wrist, delicate but clearly expensive. The financial files from their shared office cabinet were missing, an entire folder labeled insurance and investments. And her phone, lying on the counter, buzzed briefly with a message preview. "Call me when you can. Use the secure line." Kathleen quickly turned the phone face down. He caught it. "Who was that?" "No one," she said quickly. "Just a client." He stepped closer. "A client who needs a secure line?" "Clint," she said softly, eyes wide. "You need to rest. You're seeing conspiracies everywhere." He stared at her for a long, silent moment, realizing the person he'd shared his life with was suddenly a stranger in his own home. Without another word, he grabbed his coat and walked out. Outside, the drizzle had turned to heavy rain again. Clint sat in his car, drenched in thought, staring through the windshield as city lights blurred into streaks. He couldn't think straight anymore. He needed someone he could trust, someone who wasn't part of this nightmare. He scrolled through his contacts and stopped at a name. Max Rivers, his old college friend, an IT consultant who'd bailed him out more than once when projects went sideways. Max was the kind of man who could dig into digital shadows and find the truth buried under layers of deceit. Clint dialed. "McMahon." Max's cheerful voice answered. "Been a while." What's up, man? I need a favor, Clint said, his tone flat. And I can't explain over the phone. That got Max's attention. You okay? No, Clint said quietly. But I'm coming over. Max lived in a cluttered apartment filled with computer monitors, empty coffee cups, and the smell of old pizza. He was in his mid-40s, balding, always in a hoodie. When Clint arrived, Max raised an eyebrow. You look like you've been hit by a truck. Feels like it, Clint muttered, sinking into a chair. He told him everything. Carrie, Francis, the forged papers, Kathleen's denial, and the unsettling clues he'd found at home. When he finished, Max whistled low. Man, that's a lot to unpack. So, what do you need from me? I need to know what Kathleen's been doing. Emails, accounts, financials, anything. Quietly, Max leaned back, rubbing his chin. You're asking me to snoop on your wife. Yes. You sure about this? Clint nodded. I don't trust her anymore. Max sighed. All right, I'll start by checking her online activity. Bank statements, encrypted messages, maybe even her cloud backups if she's sloppy with passwords. Clint managed a weary smile. You always were good at this. Yeah, but it'll take time, Max said, already typing rapidly. Give me a day. Clint nodded, standing to leave. Thanks, Max. I just need to know the truth. Hey, Max said, glancing up. Whatever it is, we'll handle it. Don't lose it yet. Clint forced a faint smile and left, but the unease in his chest didn't ease. The next evening, Clint was pacing his office when his phone buzzed. It was Max. Talk to me, Clint said immediately. There was a pause on the line. You might want to sit down. I'm already sitting. All right, I found something. Kathleen's been making a lot of private transfers, small amounts, spaced out, but consistent. And last week, Max hesitated. She took out a new life insurance policy. Clint frowned. Life insurance? Yeah, in your name. What? Clint, it's a $1 million policy. You're the insured party. She's the sole beneficiary. The room went cold. Max's voice dropped. You didn't sign it, did you? Clint's heart hammered in his chest. No, he whispered. Then someone forged your signature again. The line went silent, save for the hum of the city outside his window. Clint closed his eyes, his pulse roaring in his ears. The forged papers, the missing files, the bracelet, the lies, they weren't random. They were steps, a plan, and he was standing right in the middle of it. Chapter 5, The Trap. The sound of rain had become a constant in Clint's life lately, steady, relentless, and cold. It pattered on the windshield as he sat in his car outside his office, a man staring into the gray fog of realization. The truth wasn't just ugly anymore. It was poisonous. Max's voice echoed in his mind. $1 million policy. In your name. She's the beneficiary. That one fact alone could have been explained away, maybe, but now the patterns were starting to connect like strands of spiderweb. Kathleen's lies weren't random. They were deliberate, layered, planned, and the web was tightening around him. He spent the following morning buried in research, combing through bank statements and document copies he could still access from their joint accounts. His architectural firm had taught him precision and attention to detail, skills now turned against the woman he once trusted most. By noon, Clint was at Max's apartment again. Coffee cups and computer cables littered the table where his friend was hunched over 2 monitors. Tell me you found something, Clint said, closing the door behind him. Max didn't look up. You might wish I hadn't. Clint stepped closer. Show me. On the screen was a list of transactions, hundreds of them. These are Kathleen's accounts, Max explained. She's juggling 6 credit cards, all maxed out. Total debt, about $350,000. Clint stared at the numbers, his stomach tightening. That's impossible. We've never been that deep in debt. We've been careful with everything. She wasn't, Max said. And that's not all. He clicked to another screen, a trail of wire transfers to a single name. Randall Austin. Who's that? Clint asked. Pharmaceutical sales rep out of Tacoma. Fired 2 years ago for fraud. Couple of DUIs, gambling debts, and a history with shady offshore accounts. Why would Kathleen send him money? That's what we need to find out. Clint exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. Max, can you dig into her communications? Emails, messages, anything that links them. I've been trying, Max said, tapping the keyboard. She's smart. uses encrypted messaging apps, and a second phone number. But I did find one appointment on her Google Calendar from last month, an estate lawyer named Lester Clayton. The note says, inheritance transfer, accidental death clause. Clint froze. Inheritance transfer? Max nodded grimly. That means she was discussing what happens to your assets if you die suddenly. A chill ran down Clint's spine. Jesus Christ. He sank into a chair, burying his face in his hands. He wanted this to be some awful misunderstanding, but the evidence said otherwise. Kathleen wasn't panicking or desperate. She was organizing. She had debts, a mysterious partner, a forged policy, and now, an estate lawyer preparing for his death. She's planning something, Max, Clint said quietly. Something big. Max sighed. You think she's trying to? Yes. Clint's voice hardened. Kill me. The room went silent, except for the faint hum of computers. That night, Clint returned home late, the apartment dark except for the faint glow from the living room. Kathleen sat curled on the sofa, wearing her usual silk robe, sipping red wine. She looked up with a tired smile. There you are, she said softly. You've been working late all week. Clint forced a neutral tone. Yeah, big project deadline. She rose and crossed the room, her hand brushing his arm. You look exhausted. You're not still upset about that Portland nonsense, are you? Not at all, he said. I just need rest. She tilted her head, studying him. You know, I've been thinking maybe we should take a little trip. Just the two of us. Get away from all this tension. A trip, he repeated. Yeah, she said brightly. The San Juan Islands. Remember the resort you love there? We could rent a yacht. Something quiet, romantic. Clint's heart thudded in his chest. A yacht. He said nothing, only managed a small nod. That sounds nice, he murmured. Her smile widened. I'll start looking into it. He watched her glide down the hall, her robe whispering against the floorboards. Every movement she made felt rehearsed. Every smile sharpened like a knife hidden behind silk. The next morning, Clint decided he couldn't face her again, not without knowing more. He drove out to see Francis and Carrie, needing the grounding of something pure in the middle of chaos. Francis lived in a modest two-bedroom house on the edge of Portland. Carrie was sitting at the kitchen table when he arrived, doing homework, her hair tied in a loose ponytail. She looked up and smiled faintly. Hi, she said softly. Hey, kiddo, Clint replied, forcing a small smile. Mind if I talk to your mom for a bit? Carrie nodded, slipping away to her room. Francis poured coffee for them both, her expression worried. You look worse than last time, she said gently. It's getting worse, he admitted. I think Kathleen's been planning something for months. She's in deep debt, making strange payments to some guy named Randall Austin, meeting lawyers about my inheritance. It's all too calculated. Francis frowned. Randall Austin? That name sounds familiar. Clint looked up. You know him. Carrie mentioned a man by that name once, Francis said slowly. She said he came by the house a few times, months ago. Said he was a friend of her mom's, Kathleen's. Clint's pulse quickened. What did he look like? Francis called down the hall. Carrie, sweetheart, can you come here a second? Carrie appeared, hesitating. Remember that man you said visited? The one your mom called Randall. Carrie nodded. Yeah, he was tall, kind of rough-looking. Drove a black Range Rover. Mom said he helped with paperwork or something. Clint leaned forward. Did he ever talk about me? Carrie frowned, thinking. Once. He said, your dad's going to be part of something big soon. I didn't know what that meant. Clint felt his chest tighten. Anything else? Carrie bit her lip. He said Mom was working hard to make things right, and that soon she'd be free. Francis looked at Clint, her face pale. Free from what? He didn't answer. He didn't need to. The pieces had just fallen into place. Kathleen was drowning in debt. Randall was her accomplice, her partner in this freedom. The insurance, the inheritance clause, the trip she'd just suggested, it wasn't coincidence. It was choreography. She wanted him isolated, away from witnesses, on a boat in open water. An accident waiting to happen. He stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. Clint, Francis said, startled. I have to go, he said. His voice was low, steady now. The shock had faded. What remained was clarity. Go where? She asked. to stop whatever she's planning. As Clint drove back toward Seattle, the rain returned, streaking the windshield in long, trembling lines. His knuckles were white on the steering wheel. Every second felt heavier now, every mile closer to danger. In his mind, he replayed the signs he'd ignored. Kathleen's new jewelry, her evasive smiles, the missing documents, the sudden affection, the talk of rekindling romance. All of it, every detail was part of the trap. And now he understood exactly what kind of woman he was dealing with. Not just a liar, not just a manipulator, but someone who had built a beautiful life with him, only to turn it into the perfect cover for his death. Clint's jaw set as the rain fell harder. He wasn't going to be her victim. He was going to expose her. Chapter 6, The Investigator. The following morning, Clint woke before dawn. Sleep had become a stranger. His mind churned with paranoia and cold logic. Every sound in the apartment felt amplified. The tick of the clock, the hum of the fridge, the faint creak of floorboards. Kathleen was still asleep, her silhouette peaceful under the sheets. The woman looked angelic in the dim light, but Clint now knew better. The face that once meant comfort now looked like camouflage. He slipped on his coat, grabbed his keys, and left without a word. By 7 a.m., he sat inside a small diner tucked away in the industrial district of Seattle. The air smelled of coffee and fried eggs. A man sat in the far booth, gray-haired, broad-shouldered, with a face that had seen too much. Bruce Everett, retired detective, now private investigator. "Mr. McMahon," Bruce said, extending a firm hand. His voice was gravel, his grip solid. "You look like hell." Clint gave a humorless smile. "Feels about right." Bruce motioned for him to sit. "You said it's about your wife. You think she's hiding something?" "Not hiding," Clint said, his tone cold. "Planning." Bruce raised an eyebrow. Clint spent the next 10 minutes explaining everything. The forged documents, the insurance policy, the debt, the mysterious man named Randall Austin, and the sudden idea of a romantic yacht trip. When he was done, Bruce leaned back, expression unreadable. "All right," he said. "If what you're saying checks out, this isn't a domestic issue. It's conspiracy and attempted murder." Clint's jaw clenched. "That's why I need proof. Something I can take to the police if it gets bad." Bruce nodded slowly. "You came to the right man." He slid a small notepad across the table. "I'll need addresses, names, any numbers you've got. I'll start tailing your wife and this Randall guy. If she's setting you up, I'll know before the week's over." Clint handed over a folder filled with notes. "Everything I've found so far. But Bruce, yeah? Be careful. Whoever she's working with, they're not amateurs." Bruce's eyes narrowed. "Neither am I." Over the next few days, Clint lived a double life. By day, he went through the motions, drafting blueprints, attending meetings, pretending nothing was wrong. By night, he spoke to Bruce in secret, each update dragging him deeper into the dark machinery of Kathleen's deception. 3 nights later, Bruce called. His tone was grim. "Clint, you might want to sit down for this." "I'm listening." "She's seeing Randall Austin. I've got photos, hotel meetups, dinners, late-night rendezvous. It's an affair, no question. But that's not all." Clint's stomach turned. "What else?" "She's also been meeting a man named Guillermo Shoemaker. Owns a yacht moored off Anacortes. Known smuggler, drugs, counterfeit goods, you name it. Not small time, either. The Coast Guard's had eyes on him for years." Clint rubbed his forehead. "Jesus Christ," Bruce continued. "For what I can tell, Randall and Guillermo are working together. They met with your wife twice this week. I bugged Guillermo's marina office, caught snippets about timing, insurance, and the trip." "The trip," Clint whispered. "The San Juan getaway." "Exactly," Bruce said. "It's the setup. They're going to stage an accident. You go overboard. Your body disappears. She cashes the insurance." Clint closed his eyes, the words hitting like ice. "Do you have recordings?" "Working on clearer audio," Bruce said. "But I've already got surveillance photos, timestamps, and transaction logs that tie her to both men. Enough to make any prosecutor raise an eyebrow." Clint exhaled shakily. "Keep digging. I'll handle the rest." That night, Clint returned home and found Kathleen humming in the kitchen, stirring a pot of soup. She turned, smiling warmly. "Hey, you just in time. I made your favorite." Clint forced a smile. Looks great. She wiped her hands on a towel, leaning casually against the counter. So, I called the marina today. They've got a yacht available for next weekend. Perfect weather, calm seas. I thought we could go unwind. He poured himself a glass of water to hide his trembling hands. Sounds perfect, he said quietly. Her smile deepened. I knew you'd say that. When she turned back to the stove, Clint's eyes flicked to the phone, left charging nearby. A new message flashed across the lock screen. Randall, all set. Gurmos, clear the route. He swallowed the rising bile in his throat and set the glass down carefully. Everything all right? She asked without turning. Yeah, he said. Just tired. Over the next 2 days, Clint began gathering his own evidence. He bought a small voice recorder, installed it discreetly in the kitchen where Kathleen took most of her calls. He accessed her email backup through a forgotten joint account password and downloaded messages linking her to Randall's payments. Each discovery burned more than the last. Transfers labeled as consulting fees, messages about insurance readiness, and even a scanned copy of his forged signature. It wasn't just betrayal anymore, it was precision. Kathleen wasn't guessing. She had planned every step. Meanwhile, Bruce kept the surveillance going. He met Clint one evening in a parking lot by the docks, handing him a USB drive and a thick envelope. These are the photos, Bruce said. Your wife and Randall, yesterday, in a motel near Bainbridge. And that's Gurmo's yacht, the Serena. Name sound familiar? Clint nodded slowly. She mentioned it once years ago. Said a client had invited her for a networking event. Bruce snorted. Yeah, networking my ass. He grew serious again. Listen, Clint, we're past suspicion. This is conspiracy to commit murder, plain and simple. You're dealing with desperate people, debt, greed, and no conscience. They think they're smart enough to get away with it. Clint's jaw tightened. Then let's make sure they don't. Bruce studied him. You got a plan? Yeah, but before that, I need to make sure everything I own is out of her reach. The next morning, Clint met with Carlton McCabe, an old acquaintance from a corporate case years back, honest, discreet, the kind of lawyer who didn't flinch under pressure. I need to set up a trust fund, Clint said, sliding documents across the polished oak desk. For my daughter, Carrie Carlson. Carlton looked up. Your daughter? It's a long story. Just make sure everything I own, my company shares, savings, real estate, goes into the trust immediately. Kathleen McMahon is not to have access. Not a cent. Carlton studied him quietly. Is there a reason you're doing this now? Clint met his eyes. Let's just say I don't plan to die anytime soon, but someone else might be planning it for me. Carlton didn't ask further questions. Understood, he said. I'll have it done by tomorrow morning. By the week's end, Clint had recordings, photos, transaction logs, and legal safeguards in place. The puzzle was complete and horrifying. He sat in his car late that night, parked along a quiet stretch overlooking the harbor. The air smelled of salt and diesel. The lights of the marina shimmered across the water like broken glass. Bruce called. Got new intel, the investigator said. They met again tonight. Gurmo, Randall, and your wife. She's finalizing details about the yacht trip. Says she wants it to feel special and final. Clint's grip tightened on the steering wheel. When Bruce hesitated, his voice low and grave. They're planning to kill you in less than a week. The world seemed to narrow around Clint. The rain, the hum of the city, his own heartbeat echoing in his ears. For the first time in his life, Clint McMahon wasn't designing a building. He was designing his survival. Chapter 7, The Calm Before the Storm. Morning light filtered softly through the kitchen blinds, painting stripes across the marble countertop. Clint stood at the stove, frying eggs, forcing himself into a routine that felt foreign. The rhythmic sizzle of oil was almost soothing, almost. Every sound, every movement now carried double meaning. Every word from Kathleen felt like a test. Behind him, her voice drifted through the quiet. You're up early again, she said, her tone light, affectionate. He turned, spatula in hand, masking his instinctive tension with a smile. Couldn't sleep. Thought I'd surprise you with breakfast. Kathleen leaned against the doorway, wearing her silk robe, coffee cup cradled in her hands. You've been so sweet lately, she said. eyes softening. I was worried work was taking too much from you. Clint flipped a fried egg onto her plate. Guess I just realized what's important. She smiled, too easily, too smoothly, and stepped closer, resting a hand on his shoulder. The warmth of her touch felt venomous, a snake coiling tighter. I love you, Clint, she murmured. He forced a steady breath. I love you too, Kathleen. It came out hollow, but she didn't notice. Or maybe she didn't care. They sat across from each other at the breakfast table, two actors rehearsing a domestic scene for an audience that didn't exist. Kathleen talked about their upcoming trip, the romantic getaway to the San Juan Islands, her eyes glimmering as she described sunsets, wine, and fresh starts. Clint nodded, matching her enthusiasm, even adding small details to sell the illusion. I'll pack my camera, he said. We haven't taken real photos together in ages. That's perfect, she replied, smiling with disarming brightness. I can't wait. Inside, his stomach turned. That afternoon, Clint drove across town to the construction site of his latest project, a glass-fronted community center rising from the ground, all steel and sunlight. Carrie was waiting at the entrance, wearing a hard hat that was too big for her, the chin strap dangling awkwardly. Dad, she called, waving both hands. The word still stunned him every time she said it, Dad. He grinned, genuine warmth breaking through the storm inside. Hey, you look ready to build something. She laughed, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. Francis said I could come. I've never been on a real site before. He handed her a smaller safety vest, the one he'd brought especially for her. Then today's your first. They walked side by side along the dusty pathway, machines rumbling in the background. Clint pointed out design elements, the load-bearing beams, the eco-glass panels, the rainwater filtration system. You really made all this? Carrie asked, wide-eyed. He smiled faintly. Designed it, yes. A lot of people helped build it. Architecture's about trust, making sure every piece holds together. Carrie looked thoughtful, like families. That hit him harder than he expected. He nodded slowly. Yeah, like families. For the next hour, they wandered through unfinished halls, their voices echoing in the steel frame. Carrie asked questions, curious, bright, unfiltered, and Clint answered each one, feeling a strange ache of pride. When they stepped outside, the sun was dipping low. Carrie hesitated, then reached out, taking his hand. I'm really glad I met you, she said quietly. Clint squeezed her hand gently. Me too, sweetheart. Later that evening, Frances Carlson met him at a small cafe just off Main Street. Her face was drawn with concern, her hands wrapped around a mug of tea she barely touched. I heard from Carrie, she said softly. She's happy. She said you've been spending time together. Clint nodded. She's incredible, Frances. Smart kind. Everything I missed. Frances managed a faint smile. She's always wanted to know who you were. Then, her expression hardened. But Clint, you need to be careful. He looked up sharply. She came to me again once, months ago, Frances said, voice trembling slightly. Kathleen. She wasn't friendly that time. She asked about my finances, where Carrie went to school, how often I was home. It was like she was mapping something. Clint's chest tightened. She's already mapped everything, he said grimly. Every detail of my life, even yours. Frances leaned in, whispering urgently. She's dangerous when cornered, Clint. Don't underestimate her. I won't, he said. That's why I'm not leaving anything to chance. That night, back home, Clint began his preparations. In the quiet of his study, he laid everything out on the desk, a GPS tracker, a small audio wire, waterproof recorder. Bruce had delivered them earlier, sealed in a discreet black case. He attached the GPS unit beneath the lining of his travel bag, tested the audio wire by recording his own voice, and saved Bruce's number under a decoy contact. Marina's Services. A map of the San Juan Islands was pinned to the corkboard above his desk, dotted with red markers and handwritten notes. Fuel dock, yacht route, Coast Guard station. He was planning a different kind of trip, one Kathleen could never imagine. His phone buzzed. A text for Bruce. Bruce, Coast Guard in the loop. Quietly. If anything happens on water, they'll be there within minutes. Clint typed back. Clint, let's make sure it never comes to that. He stared at the screen a long while before locking it. The next few days were a masterclass in performance. Kathleen played the loving wife to perfection, brushing his lapel before he left for work, kissing his cheek in the morning, leaving flirty notes in his lunchbox. "You've been distant lately," she said one night while watching TV. "Promise me this trip will help us reset." Clint wrapped an arm around her shoulders, feigning affection. "That's the plan," he murmured. Her head rested against his chest. He could feel the calmness in her breathing, the ease of someone who believed they'd already won. It terrified him more than her anger ever had. By Friday, everything was in place. Bruce had confirmed the yacht reservation under Kathleen's name. The Coast Guard had the coordinates. Carlton had finalized a trust fund for Carrie. Every move, every precaution was locked tight. Yet Clint couldn't shake the feeling that the storm was already gathering at the edges of his calm facade. That evening, he stopped by Francis's house to drop off documents for Carrie's future. The trust papers, a few old photos, and a handwritten note he couldn't bring himself to read aloud. Francis stood at the doorway as he turned to leave. "Clint," he paused. "You're doing the right thing," she said softly. "But sometimes the right thing still costs everything." He nodded, eyes hollow. "I know." That night, the McMahon house glowed with quiet domestic warmth. The scent of lavender candles filled the air. Kathleen moved around the bedroom, folding clothes neatly into her suitcase. Clint stood at the window, watching the streetlights shimmer across the wet pavement. She approached from behind, sliding her arms around his waist. "You've been quiet all evening," she whispered, chin against his shoulder. "Just thinking about the trip," he said. Her fingers traced the edge of his shirt collar. "You'll love it," she murmured. "The sea, the quiet, just the two of us. After this trip, everything will change." Her voice lingered, soft, sweet, and deadly. Clint didn't turn around. He just stared into the darkness beyond the glass, the faint reflection of her smiling face beside his. He forced a calm breath and whispered, almost to himself, "Yes, everything will." Chapter 8, The Yacht. The morning mist hung low over the marina, wrapping the docked boats in a ghostly veil. The faint tang of salt air mixed with engine fumes and seagull cries. Clint McMahon stood on the weathered wooden planks, a travel bag slung over his shoulder, the rhythmic slap of waves echoing beneath his shoes. Kathleen's voice broke the silence behind him. "Isn't it beautiful?" she said, her tone breathy, almost giddy. "Just you, me, and the ocean. Exactly what we need." Clint turned, forcing a smile. "It's perfect." He followed her gaze to the sleek white yacht bobbing gently at the end of the pier. The Sea Lark, letters painted in deep blue across its hull. A tall man in aviator sunglasses stood on deck, waving lazily. "Clint, this is Randall," Kathleen said as they approached. "He's the guide Gurmo recommended. Knows these islands like the back of his hand." Randall extended a hand, grin practiced and tight. "Mr. McMahon, pleasure. Heard you're an architect. Beautiful work on that downtown center." "Appreciate it," Clint said evenly, shaking his hand. The grip was strong, almost too strong, as if to establish dominance. Randall's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Gurmo's below deck," Randall continued. "Prepping the navigation system, and some champagne for you too. We'll shove off in 10. "Sounds good," Clint said. He followed Kathleen aboard, every nerve in his body humming like a live wire. The yacht glided smoothly out of the harbor, cutting through the morning fog toward open sea. The city skyline faded behind them, Seattle's steel and glass shrinking to nothing but a gray outline. Kathleen lounged on the deck in a wide-brimmed hat and sunglasses, a glass of champagne in hand. Her laughter carried on the breeze, light and careless. "Finally," she said. "No phones, no clients, no stress. Just us." Clint lifted his glass, careful not to drink too much. "Just us," he echoed. Randall leaned casually against the railing, watching the horizon. His tan looked uneven, his eyes bloodshot, details Clint filed away silently. The man reeked of desperation. Below deck, Clint had already placed the small recorder inside his jacket pocket, the audio wire clipped discreetly beneath his shirt. The GPS beacon blinked silently inside his bag, transmitting their coordinates in real time to Bruce and the Coast Guard. Every sound aboard the Sea Lark was being fed to a secure channel. "Would you like another drink?" Kathleen asked sweetly, holding up the champagne bottle. Clint shook his head. "Not yet. Want to stay clear-headed for a bit." She pouted. "Oh, come on, Clint. You're always so serious. Live a little." He smiled faintly. "Later. I promise." She shrugged, pouring herself more. Randall's phone buzzed briefly in his pocket. He glanced at it, then at Kathleen. She gave the slightest nod. Hours passed. The sun climbed high, glaring off the water. Clint pretended to admire the view, though his eyes tracked every movement between Kathleen and Randall. They exchanged looks, the subtle cues. They thought he didn't notice. Eventually, Kathleen stood. "I'll grab us lunch," she said, heading below deck. Randall waited a beat, then approached Clint with a manila envelope. "While she's gone," he said casually, "Gurmo asked me to get your signature on a few things. Just standard liability waivers, insurance updates for the vessel." Clint raised an eyebrow. "Insurance?" "Yeah, just in case of an accident." Randall's tone was too light, his smile forced. "You know how these things go." He opened the envelope and slid a few papers across the table. Clint glanced down. The documents were dense with fine print, legal jargon, financial language, but one thing stood out. His signature. Already there. "Funny," Clint said quietly, tracing the forged mark with his finger. "I don't remember signing this." Randall's jaw flexed. "Must have been a copy from before." "Right?" Clint murmured. He leaned back, eyes narrowing. "You ever think about how people make mistakes when they try too hard to fake things?" Randall froze. "What are you talking about?" Before Clint could answer, Kathleen reappeared, balancing a tray of fruit and 2 more glasses of champagne. Her smile faltered slightly when she saw the papers. "Randall," she said sharply, "you weren't supposed to bother him with that yet." The air thickened. Randall looked between them, unease flickering in his eyes. "I was just doing what?" Clint asked softly. Then, in one smooth motion, Randall reached under his jacket and pulled out a gun. "Don't move," he snapped. His voice shook slightly, but his grip didn't. "Signed arrest." "Now." Kathleen's facade shattered like glass. She dropped the tray, the sound of breaking glass scattering across the deck. "You were supposed to make this easy," she hissed at Clint, eyes blazing. "You always have to be the hero, don't you?" Clint's pulse thundered, but his expression stayed eerily calm. "So this is how you say goodbye?" "Don't you dare talk to me like that," Kathleen spat. "You think I wanted this? You left me with nothing. The debts, the loans, I was drowning while you played the perfect husband." Randall barked. "Enough. Sign it." He shoved the papers toward Clint. The yacht rocked gently beneath them, the engine humming faintly. Clint looked from the gun to Kathleen, then smiled. A slow, unnerving smile. "You really should have chosen better partners," he said quietly. "Because while you've been talking, every word you've said has been going straight to the Coast Guard and the FBI." Randall blinked. "What?" Clint tapped the side of his shirt, where a faint red light pulsed beneath the fabric. "Live transmission. Audio, GPS, the whole thing. They've been listening for the past hour." Kathleen's face drained of color. "You're lying." "Try me," Clint said, eyes locked on hers. "Wave at the camera if you want." Panic rippled through the group. Randall's hand trembled. The gun wavered between them. "You set us up." Gurmo burst up from below deck, wild-eyed. "What's going on?" He saw the gun, the terror on Kathleen's face, and bolted toward the control cabin. "Gurmo, don't!" Kathleen shouted, but he was already fumbling with the radio. The moment he pressed the throttle, Clint lunged, grabbing the edge of the table and flipping it toward Randall. The gun went off, the bullet splintering wood. Kathleen screamed. The yacht lurched violently as Gurmo tried to steer, waves slapping hard against the hull. Randall stumbled, the gun skittering across the deck before clattering near the railing. Clint kicked it away, panting. Sirens wailed faintly in the distance, faint but growing louder. Randall froze, staring at the horizon. "Oh God, they're really coming." His voice broke, the bravado collapsing. "Listen to me," Clint said, stepping closer, voice firm but calm. "You can still walk away from this. You cooperate, I'll help pay your debts. You have a chance to fix your life. Don't throw it away for her. Randall's breath hitched. His shoulders slumped. Slowly, he lowered his hands. The gun clattered to the deck. Kathleen turned on him, shrieking, "You idiot! You ruined everything." He stared at her, tears cutting through the salt spray on his face. "No," he whispered. "You did." Sirens blared louder now, flashing lights streaking across the waves. The Coast Guard cutter closed in fast, armed officers ready. Clint exhaled, his heart pounding as the blue lights flooded the deck. The storm had finally broken. Chapter 9, Justice. The Coast Guard cutter sliced through the waves, blue and red lights flashing across the darkening water. The Sea Lark rocked gently beneath its own weight, now under heavy scrutiny. Clint stood at the bow, arms crossed, his jacket damp from sea spray, watching as officers swarmed the yacht. Kathleen screamed, slamming her fists against the railing. "You're insane. You think you can ruin me, Clint?" "You step aside," a Coast Guard officer commanded, his voice sharp and authoritative. Gurmo bolted toward the control cabin, but another officer intercepted him, tackling him to the deck. Randall sank to his knees, hands raised, tears streaming down his face. Kathleen's wide-eyed fury met the unflinching gaze of armed law enforcement. "Hands where I can see them," the officer barked. Kathleen's screams echoed over the water as she was handcuffed. "This is your fault. You were supposed to make me rich. Everything I did was for us." Clint said nothing. He watched, calm, his chest tightening only once when he saw Carrie's face flash in his mind. The girl he'd finally found, the life he had to protect. Bruce Everett stepped up behind Clint, handing him a USB drive. "Everything we've got," Bruce said. "Photos, audio, financial records, emails, the works." Clint nodded. "Perfect." He glanced at the trio being led below deck. Gurmo scowled, Randall sobbed, and Kathleen's screams had turned into hysterical cackling. "They won't see daylight for a long time," Clint murmured, turning to Bruce. "Not if the courts do their job right," Bruce said. 2 months later, the courtroom was packed. Cameras clicked, journalists whispered, and the air was thick with anticipation. Clint sat at the plaintiff's table, dressed sharply in a navy suit, his posture impeccable. Carlton McCabe was beside him, files neatly stacked, a quiet pillar of authority. The judge entered, and silence fell. Kathleen, Randall, and Gurmo were led in, handcuffed, their expressions a mixture of rage, shame, and panic. Kathleen's eyes locked on Clint, the fire in them undimmed. "Your Honor," the prosecutor began, voice clear, commanding. "The defendants conspired to commit murder, fraud, and wire forgery. The victim, Mr. Clint McMahon, nearly lost his life due to their meticulously planned plot. The evidence includes surveillance, live audio recordings, transaction logs, and forged legal documents. This case is not hypothetical. It is a stark account of greed and premeditated betrayal." Kathleen snapped. "This is absurd. He ruined me. I was trying to save us." "Silence," the judge barked. Clint leaned forward slightly, his expression controlled. He didn't look angry, only precise, measured, like a man analyzing blueprints. He allowed the prosecutor to present the recordings first. Audio snippets of Kathleen coordinating with Randall, discussing the yacht trip, payments, and the insurance policy played over the courtroom speakers. Randall's voice shook. "Make sure he signs before Friday. I'll handle the rest." Kathleen's voice followed. "Everything is ready. He won't suspect a thing. It'll look natural." Gasps rippled through the gallery. Next came the financial trail. Detailed charts of Kathleen's debts, transfers to Randall, offshore accounts linked to Gurmo. Clint had watched Carlton present each figure with meticulous care. The courtroom was silent, except for the occasional click of a camera or whisper of disbelief. Then came the forged insurance documents. Clint rose slowly, voice steady as he addressed the judge. "These signatures are mine," he said, pointing to the pages. "I never authorized them. Every transaction, every document, every email sent by Kathleen, it was forged to create the illusion of consent. They thought I would be naive. They thought I would die quietly. They were wrong." Kathleen laughed, a high, bitter sound. "You think you're a hero? You're just a man who got lucky. Clint's eyes met hers. I'm not lucky. I'm prepared. The trial stretched over several days. Witnesses were called. Bruce Everett detailed surveillance operations. Max explained digital tracking, and even insurance representatives testified to the irregularities in the policy. Each statement tightened the noose of evidence around the trio. Kathleen remained defiant throughout, sneering and shouting at Clint, claiming he had destroyed her life, her reputation, and her plans for the future. Randall occasionally sobbed openly, trembling on the witness stand, while Gurmo attempted a half-hearted defense, claiming ignorance and blaming Kathleen entirely. The jury didn't waver. When closing arguments came, the prosecutor's voice rang with finality. These defendants betrayed trust, premeditated a heinous crime, and manipulated legal and financial systems to their advantage. The victim, Mr. McMahon, showed remarkable composure under threat. He not only survived but ensured that justice could prevail. We ask that the court deliver sentences reflecting the severity of these crimes. Carlton McCabe added quietly, Mr. McMahon's actions saved lives and prevented murder. His foresight and patience are remarkable. He deserves recognition, not condemnation. The verdict came quickly after deliberation. The room was tense as the clerk read aloud. On counts of conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, wire fraud, and forgery. Kathleen McMahon, guilty. Randall Austin, guilty. Gurmo Shoemaker, guilty. Sentencing to follow. The judge's gavel struck like a hammer. Kathleen McMahon, 30 years. Randall Austin, 25 years. Gurmo Shoemaker, 15 years. The court also sentences the disbarred lawyer and insurance fixer to additional terms, as detailed in the files. Gasps and whispers filled the courtroom. Kathleen's face went pale, her defiance slipping for the first time. She glared at Clint, venomous and powerless. You'll pay for this, she screamed, but no one listened. Randall's shoulders sagged with relief, tears streaming freely. Gurmo slumped in defeat, muttering curses under his breath. Clint sat back, expression unreadable. Relief mingled with fatigue, but above it all was clarity. He had seen the worst of human nature, and he had survived. Outside, journalists clamored. Microphones thrust forward as Clint navigated a careful path through the press. Cameras flashed as questions poured in. How did you survive? One reporter asked. What would you say to people who doubt their own safety? Another queried. Clint paused, eyes steady and calm, before answering. Preparation, patience, and vigilance. Sometimes the best defense is foresight, and sometimes the best revenge isn't violence. It's justice. The phrase spread quickly, headlines capturing it in bold type. Architect outsmarts murder plot. Clint McMahon survives wife's conspiracy. Seattle man foils insurance and inheritance scheme. Justice served. McMahon, calm under fire, saves life and career. For once, the media attention felt deserved, a recognition of intellect, restraint, and courage rather than scandal. Later, Clint returned home, the weight of weeks of fear finally giving way. He didn't rush to celebrate. Instead, he checked on Carrie, ensuring her room was intact, her future secure. Carlton had finalized a trust fund, all assets safe, untouchable by Kathleen or her associates. Frances called that evening, her voice soft over the phone. Clint, you did it. You protected her. Thank you. Thank you for stepping up when no one else could. Clint's voice was quiet, but resolute. We did it together. She's safe now. That's all that matters. Frances's tone sharpened slightly, a note of warning lingering. Just remember, Clint, Kathleen is dangerous, even behind bars. People like her never stop plotting entirely. I know, Clint said, a faint smile breaking through. But right now, she's exactly where she belongs. As the sun set over Seattle, casting long orange reflections across the bay, Clint McMahon allowed himself a rare moment of stillness. The nightmare was over. Justice had been served. He had faced betrayal, death threats, and deception at the hands of the woman he once loved most. Yet through intelligence, caution, and unwavering resolve, He had ensured survival and the safety of his daughter. The courtroom had spoken, and the sentences were final. Kathleen, 30 years. Randall, 25. Gurmo, 15. The rest, the disbarred lawyer, the insurance fixer, were behind bars too, paying for their complicity. The media called him the architect who outsmarted his murder plot. Clint didn't care about the title. What mattered was truth, justice, and a future he would build carefully, brick by brick, for himself and Carrie. Chapter 10, Rebuilding. Months had passed since the courtroom drama had ended. Seattle skies had shifted from the cold, gray winters to the tentative warmth of early spring. The rain still fell, soft and persistent, but it now felt cleansing rather than foreboding. For Clint McMahon, each drop seemed to wash away the last traces of fear, leaving space for purpose, for rebuilding. He sat in the small office of the Francis Carlson Community Center, a building that had risen in a modest neighborhood in South Seattle. The center, designed with floor-to-ceiling windows and a sunlit open-plan main hall, was a testament to both architectural vision and personal mission. Clint leaned back in his chair, reviewing blueprints for the final touches, but his thoughts kept drifting to the two people who had changed everything. Carrie and Francis. Francis, now the director of the center, had a quiet authority about her. She moved gracefully between offices and classrooms, helping single parents find resources, job training, and mentorship. Clint watched her from the doorway as she spoke gently to a mother struggling with childcare, her face a mix of compassion and determination. Francis, Clint said, approaching, the wing in the East Hall. The lighting fixtures need your final approval. She turned, smiling. I trust your eye, but I want to see you out there, too. The community deserves to meet the architect behind the space. He gave a small laugh, the sound light after months of tension. I'll go, but only if Carrie comes too. She's already claimed she wants to show me how she would rearrange the furniture. Francis raised an eyebrow, but said nothing, simply watching him with a knowing look. Carrie, now 16, had grown taller, her long brown hair pulled into a practical ponytail as she sketched at a table in the center's design room. The girl's talent was already remarkable, her lines confident, her attention to proportion precise. She looked up as Clint approached. Dad, she said, eyes bright, I finished the model for the youth shelter. You have to see it. Clint walked over, crouching beside her. The model was meticulous, every detail accounted for, ramps for accessibility, green spaces for community gardens, sunlight angles for optimal lighting. This is incredible, Carrie, he said, pride and awe mixing in his voice. You're thinking like a real architect. Carrie grinned, brushing a stray strand of hair from her face. I learned from the best, didn't I? Clint ruffled her hair, feeling the familiar warmth spread through him. It was a connection he had fought to reclaim, nurtured carefully, and now it was stronger than ever. Later that week, Clint accompanied Carrie to the admissions office of a prestigious summer architecture program at Yale. She had won a scholarship for her designs at the community center, a recognition of her talent and diligence. The admissions officer shook her hand, smiling. We're thrilled to have you, Carrie. Your portfolio shows extraordinary promise for someone your age. Clint watched silently, feeling both pride and a twinge of disbelief. He remembered the day he first met her at Lakewood Academy, unsure and fearful. Now she was stepping into her own future, and he had helped guide her to this moment. As they left the building, Carrie slipped her hand into his. Thanks for believing in me, Dad, she said softly. You don't need me to believe, Clint said. You've already proven you can do this yourself. Her smile lit up her face, and for the first time in years, Clint felt unreservedly hopeful. Back at the apartment, Clint's routine had shifted to accommodate the new balance of life. Work on the community center, mentorship of Carrie, quiet evenings, reflecting. One afternoon, a letter arrived. The return address made him pause. Washington State Penitentiary, Kathleen McMahon. He sliced the envelope open, unfolding the paper carefully. Kathleen's handwriting, jagged, desperate, filled the page. Clint, I never imagined the life I planned would crumble like this. I let greed consume me, let twist every thought, every action. I lost my soul. I thought I could control everything, that you would always be just a step behind. But you were always smarter, steadier. I should have never involved Randall or Gurmo. I'm sorry for everything. I thought I could justify my actions, but I can't. You and Carrie didn't deserve this. Clint read the letter twice, letting the words sink in. He didn't feel satisfaction or triumph. He felt nothing for her. The past was a closed chapter, sealed by the law, by evidence, by truth. Kathleen would face her sentence, 30 years, and he would not be the recipient of her manipulations any longer. He folded the letter and placed it in a drawer. No response. No words. There was nothing left to say. Weeks later, Clint and Carrie stood together in front of the latest addition to the community center, a bright, airy annex they had designed side by side. The sun glinted off the glass panels, casting reflections that danced across the courtyard. Children ran through the open space, their laughter mingling with the spring breeze. Carrie's eyes swept over the building, her chest rising with excitement. Look, Dad, the sunlight hits the main hall just like we planned, and the garden will bloom in exactly the right spots. Clint smiled, his heart full. You've done an amazing job. I'm proud of you, Carrie. Truly. She nudged his side playfully. You're supposed to say we designed it, remember? He laughed softly, pulling her into a brief hug. We did together. Every brick, every window, every corner. They stepped back, surveying the building in silence for a long moment. The wind carried the faint scent of paint and fresh timber. The sound of laughter and life filled the space, a reminder that even in the aftermath of destruction, growth was possible. Clint turned to Carrie, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. Some people build to forget, he said, his voice steady and reflective. I build to remember that even from ruins, beauty can rise again. Carrie nodded, understanding more than her age might suggest. She glanced up at the sun reflecting on the glass, feeling the weight of survival and the joy of creation. Clint looked at her and then at the building before them, the culmination of so much loss, fear, and determination. He knew the road ahead would still have challenges. Life always did, but for the first time in a long while, he felt a quiet certainty. They had survived. They had rebuilt. And from the ashes of betrayal, hope had risen. The sunlight shifted, gleaming across the glass panels. And for Clint, it was a symbol, a reflection of the life he had fought for, the daughter he had protected, and the promise of new beginnings. Together, they turned back toward the community center's entrance, ready to continue their work, ready to help others rise from their own ruins.